you will have to say no a lot, certainly in the beginning, because the moment people know that you run your own company, a lot of people will come to you if they know you. But from all the 10 requests, let's say 2 are actually valuable and all the rest is just wasting your time or taking advantage of you. That sounds really negative, but it is. So with the smelly days, I mean, getting up late in the morning, in your sweatpants, playing video games, watching Netflix show after Netflix show. I feel like, oh, what is this day? And the next day you get up and you have the best ideas. You write 5 books, but you need the smelly days.
Your frontline workers are the ones who will bring you content. You just need to ask them about it.
Yeah.
Like if you go to customer service, like they know what's on the minds of your customers.
But not a lot of people are going to remember everything that we're saying. Maybe some quotes or maybe some points, but most of them will be like, did I enjoy this? And I'm going to listen to a new podcast by Jasper, or I'm going to look Marnik up on LinkedIn. Will be based on how we're bringing this.
Today we have Marnick Vandebroek on the podcast.
Wow, the crowd goes wild. Good morning.
I can introduce you because you're probably like the only person I know who actually wrote a book. So
there
that's
you go.
one way to introduce you. But maybe you can tell everyone who's Marnick Vandebroek. What do they need to know?
Who's Marnick Vandebroek? Normally I would ask like, what do you want to know? But that will take too long. Personal life. Marnick Vandebroek, 36 years old. I think age is not that important, but it keeps me young. Every time I say 36, I still feel young. I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah, as long as that tree is there, it's good for me. Happily married. I met my wife in school, so we have been together for ages, married together. But why is that also important? Because I also work with her. So I didn't only wrote a book, but also work and live with my partner. So we are together, except for this podcast, of course. 24/7, and that goes crazy, because what's the most important part of a relationship, besides a lot of things, of course, is communication, and that's what our business focuses on. I have 2 cats that are now running in and out of this podcast, so I don't know if you can hear them, but they're present and they're looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? And on a professional note, not to make this too long, we run stand-up comedy. We've been doing this for 7 years. I used to come from the agency world. I went to PepsiCo, 7-Up, Tropicana, Lay's, Doritos, all those brands where I did the digital marketing. And then at a certain point, someone came to me and said, Marnik, besides the digital marketing, how do you get it done? When there's a hiring freeze, you get to hire people. When there's a budget cut, you get budget. How do you do it? And I never really thought about it, but I was doing a lot of stand-up comedy in that day. And I was using a lot of techniques in the boardroom that I also used on stage. Started training people in that, and it became such a success within PepsiCo that it was like, if PepsiCo needs it, other companies also need it. Quit my job, and now together with Natalie, we have been doing this for 7 years. So that, in a nutshell, is me private and professional.
So the business could almost be described as like a spin-off of your professional life and corporate back in the day.
It's true.
Like you discovered the need there. I come from
a huge family. Huge. I don't know if it's huge, but when we come together, it's more than 70 people.
Oh, wow.
And that's just one side of the family. 70 people.
That's huge. I mean, like when my family comes together, it's more like 10.
There you go. So it's big. But the thing is, almost, not to say everybody, maybe 1 or 2, are all entrepreneurs. They're running their own business. It goes all over the place, but they're all entrepreneurs. And as a kid, I was like, I need to start my own business. But I never knew what. And then to come to your point, I was always looking for it, and I never knew what. And then all of a sudden, this little story that I told you happened. Yeah. And you just flow in it, and it's just a spin-off, and you're like, why haven't I been thinking so much about it? Just go with the flow, and before you know it, you find it.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I like, as a kid myself, my parents were always like, what do you want to do later in life? And I'm like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And they were like, okay, but what are you going to do?
There you go.
Like, as an entrepreneur, you need something. I'm like, well, I don't know. No, like, I can start right now. So I'll see, like, what the world looks like at the time that I'm ready to be an entrepreneur. And I'll find something that actually like interests me and that I want to go into. And that's basically exactly what I did. So it's like a very similar story I have.
I think most of the stories that I know are like that, if you really notice it. But in the end, we always think we have to find that holy grail.
Yeah.
Just live your life.
It doesn't exist.
No. And even if you
No.
know, you probably agree with this. Even if you're doing your business, whatever it is, service, products, even if you're doing that throughout the years, you discover so much new stuff. And then you look back 7 years and you're like, whoa, I was doing that 7 years ago and now I'm doing this. And even there, you just...
Exactly. It changes all the time.
That's the beauty.
As it's supposed to be, I feel. One of the things that I'm definitely very bad at is like taking time off. So I saw your out of office email when I was sending you like the last information about the podcast today. And I was like, okay, I want to know, like, how do you plan for taking time off? Like, do you have certain things that you do to prepare for taking time off? And how do you make sure that you actually like stay out of your email inbox?
It's a really, I think that's the struggle of everyone running their own business. No matter if you have a lot of employees or you're just self-employed, doesn't matter because...
Oh, so it's not only me.
No, and I think that's a lot of people say like, oh, I want to start my own business in whatever it is because I want more freedom. But we all know, yes, you have more freedom. Like if I say tomorrow, I want to go on holiday, then I don't have to ask nobody permission. I don't have to plan it and take into account other people. You just do what you want to do. If I want to go shopping tomorrow, I go shopping tomorrow unless I have some sort of meetings. So there is a lot of freedom. You can be your own thing. You can steer your business. But we all know that in the end, you're going to be working all the time because it's for yourself and there's always something to do. And even seeing I'm working with Natalie together with your partner, you also don't have to not just find time off, but also not only become business partners, but also stay a couple. Two different dimensions. But to answer your question, I struggled with it a lot. We looked at certain years that we said we didn't take any holiday, not that we didn't want to, but your time flies. And now it's pretty simple. You got to plan it up front. I'm not saying you have to do every time off holiday that you plan, but you got to block those weeks. And sometimes that turns into a holiday abroad. But sometimes, like last week, which we got the out of office for, it's just a week that I blocked because I know I had so many conferences, so much traveling, that I'm like, this week, nothing.
Yeah.
Just at home, reading books, playing video games, off the planet, just doing certain... And if you plan it, you do it. If you don't, there's always an excuse. There's always a client that wants a call. There's always something.
Exactly. And like... Do you have a hard time like actually not looking at any work stuff while you're taking time off?
Well, that's the cool... I can't speak for everybody, but that's the cool thing. If you really do what you love to do, looking at your mailbox, getting requests for calls, I think looking at my mailbox is an adventure. Every morning I open my mailbox and it's not stress. Of course, you have things from accountancy or the government wants something from you. Then you're like, oh, here we go again. So there's not always fun and games, but most of the time you just look at your mailbox and you're like, ooh, this client is asking something. Ooh, this person DM'd me on LinkedIn and wants to do something. And it's always like, what's the next big thing? Yeah. So also on holiday, I have no problem looking at my mailbox. I'm not saying I'm going to answer everything, but it's like one big adventure. And I think if you really love what you do, most of the time, let's say 90% should be that. And if that's not the case and you get stressed from your mailbox, then you should also question other things, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I do try to like actually not look at it from time to time, just to give my brain the space to wander, basically. Because I feel that also is like it recharges my creativity. I feel like after that, I just like feel better. And I'm also better at like everything that I need to do after that. So I think there's like a pretty good balance to be found there.
Yeah, you need that. You need that. I call them smelly days. It's a bad translation of what I say normally in Flemish. But you need those smelly days. Could also be that on those smelly days, I check my mailbox. I don't answer them, but I just want to see what's coming in. But what you said, you need that so much. And it's really hard if you work for yourself because you always have that, yeah, but I could play video games right now. But if I don't play video games and I work on a project, I write my next book, I think about the strategy for next year, there's always something to do. But with the smelly days, I mean, getting up late in the morning, in your sweatpants, playing video games, watching Netflix show after Netflix show, just eating whatever you can find that doesn't have to make sense. And at the end of the day, I feel like I don't know. I feel dirty. I feel like, oh, what is this day? And the next day you get up and you have the best ideas. You write 5 books, but you need the smelly days.
No, exactly. I agree. Can you tell me a little bit more about wolf leadership?
Wolf leadership. You know more about the wolf leadership than me. In essence, if you look at what we do, our main focus is storytelling, communication, public speaking, everything that has to do with bringing across your message. And one of the, if not to say most important things, because basically for me, leadership is communication. Because yes, there's a lot of things a leader should have as attributes and certain behavior, but leadership is communicating in a certain way. So you motivate people, inspire people, give them feedback in the right way, and get them to take ownership. And if you don't know how to communicate, it doesn't have to be that you're the most charismatic leader, because there's so many great leaders that aren't the best in how they bring their message, but there's always a certain amount of communication skills that is needed to get it across. And that being said, we also transitioned more into leadership. We still do what we do, but we got more and more requests for leadership programs, for leadership trainings, naturally, and we focus purely on the communication part. And wolf leadership, that's why I say you know more about it, is like, I wrote a blog post a century ago about that famous visual, that hoax that you have these wolves in the snow and everybody says this is a great leadership because you have the wolf in the front and then people are following for the snow, and that's what
I'll link the article in the show notes, the article that you wrote, and people can look up the image itself.
There you go. And I thought I'm going to give my own interpretation of that visual just for fun, just to compare it to how most leadership goes in the corporate world, and it exploded. I don't know what happened, but on LinkedIn, on the website, it's crazy. Actually, it's a really short blog post. And then we thought, let's call our program that we have based on that Wolf Leadership, Becoming Wolf, Becoming Worthy of Leadership Functions. And what we do, you can also see it there, it's a leadership program focused on who you are, your energy, hardcore values that I took from back in the day when I had my burnout. I worked a lot on my own values, do so much against my own values, and then how to communicate that and become that inspiring leader. And that became a program. And the cool thing is now we're doing it in companies. Funny thing is, all the companies renamed the program to their own internal program, which I get completely. But in essence, it's always the whole becoming.
They still buy into the wolf leadership.
Wolf works. Wolf is also an aspiring animal. Everybody wants to be a wolf.
That's true. And how did you actually come up with writing that article? Because before the podcast today, I quickly looked up your website on Ahrefs, the SEO tool I use. I see it's still bringing in a bunch of traffic.
It's true.
Until this point. So how did you think, I need to write an article about wolf leadership or about this image specifically?
First, 2 reasons. And now it's easier, of course, in hindsight. 2 reasons. One is I saw the visual in that time so many times on my LinkedIn that I was like, oh my God, this visual again. Seriously, is everybody posting this? And then I thought, if I see it so much, it has to be trending. And I started thinking about it because I got confronted with the visual. And then I thought, I'm going to give my own version here. Even if LinkedIn keeps pushing this to me and I keep looking at it and clicking on it, I need to do my own version.
Yeah.
That's reason 1. And reason 2 is it's not believing, it's actually a knowing, because you also see the same in marketing, is we wanted to transition from just public speaking to more full communication, leadership, that it goes further than just I want to stand on stage, because there's so many people that never stand on stage but speak to a group every single day. And as you know, if you want to do something, you got to prime people in letting them know that you have something to say about that topic. So this was one of the first in many videos, LinkedIn posts about leadership, showing people we have an idea about it. Maybe you should book us for it or ask us for it. And once we started doing those posts, which this one kicked off, we started getting requests. Can you come speak for the board? We need to set up a program. And that's how the ball started rolling.
Talking about speaking in front of a group, I know that it's quite often listed as the thing that people are most scared of.
Yeah.
Like public speaking. Well, you wrote a book on it. So why do you think that is?
There's many reasons that people give to it. I think it comes down to some people say it comes from are ancient times, which I don't know if it's true, but it makes sense to me, that when you stand somewhere in the savannah plain back in the day, and you are surrounded by, let's say, a group of tigers, well, if you are alone and a group of tigers is looking at you, that's a weak position to be in, and that's not a position you want to be in.
I mean, that looks like you're the meal at that point.
There you go. You're the meal. And even if it's not tigers and you're in your group, because we are group animals, if you could call us animals, we're group animals. So also there, if you get separated from the group because nobody likes you anymore and everybody's looking at you, again, weak position. So some people say it's that we get confronted again with, ooh, we're not in the pack, everybody's looking at us, that's a weak position. Other people say, and I recently saw an interview from Mel Gibson. Now, Mel has a great experience if you look at what was happening in the last couple of years in being in that spotlight, in a bad spotlight. But in the interview, he said, I think it's not necessarily that people are afraid of public speaking, but that they're afraid of public humiliation. And he links it more to the fear of people. If I mess up here, hundreds, maybe thousands of people will see me mess up and I will be ashamed, humiliated. People will talk about me. And he said that's the fear that people have, and everything linked to the humiliation, with public speaking being one of the forerunners in that, is the reason. So there's many things. I think in general it's a combination. It's scary. People look at you. You don't want to fail.
People are basically like linking their public speaking performance to their self-worth.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I think something that everyone knows is like back in the day in like high school, and you needed to like talk in front of the class. It was the same thing. Like you would get sweaty hands just because like these are your peers, these are your friends in the class, and you don't want to be like ashamed in front of them because you like mess up or because you fumble your words or whatever. It's really funny.
It's a vulnerable, even if you ask questions to an audience, you have to do it in the right way, because people are sometimes surprised that they don't get an answer. But you have to imagine everybody struggles with that same thing. So if you're asking an audience, they're in the audience, so they're in the safe zone. But even there, if you ask them to say something, it's them attracting the attention, having to throw some sentences to you, people looking at them, and that's why everybody's silent. They're like, I don't want to be in the spotlight for that same reason.
I think like one of the things that's, because I used to hate public speaking. No, I don't do it that often, but I still quite enjoy it. And I think creating YouTube videos, for example, is also a form of public speaking.
There you go.
And one of the things that like changed it for me was a quote from Theodore Roosevelt about men in the arena. I don't know if you are aware of that one.
I think it's even in the book.
It could very well be. It's been a while since
Last
I read
page.
the book, so I don't know exactly what's in it, but you probably know best. But that's definitely one that like had a very big impact in changing my mindset about doing things in public, and just like about going out there and doing stuff in general and not being afraid to fail. Because like, I'm not gonna like quote the entire thing, but it's about like the people actually making it happen in the arena, and the people like watching what happens in the arena. Like they aren't doing anything. Like they aren't like trying to win something. They will not win. They will not fail. They will just sit there and look at what other people are doing and comment on that. But at the end of the day, it's like the man in the arena that makes it happen.
There you go.
And I thought that was like a really good one.
It is. And it doesn't have to be that you want all the attention or things like that. It's like when we say the book is called Stand Up to Stand Out, not to talk about the book the whole time, but Stand Up to Stand Out is basically that. People that decide in a company, in your own company, in a corporate, whatever, and you say, I stand up in front of the group. These are my ideas. These are my projects. This is what I believe in. And you really take a stand and be like, it's uncomfortable, but I'm going to do this like you're saying.
Yeah.
Then you will stand out. You will not stand out because you dyed your hair purple and you have a clown face on and everybody's like, what the hell are you doing?
You will stand out in a different way at that point.
Yeah, you will stand out. But it will be because so many people they have these ideas, but they're afraid, which is okay, which is perfectly normal. Okay, and if then some people decide, no, I'm going to go through that comfort zone and stand up for what I believe in, those people will stand up because people are like, oh my God, you're so inspiring. I want that. And yeah, that's the beauty if you take that step.
Absolutely. Okay, to segue into like we've talked about the article about wolf leadership, then I also looked at your YouTube channel to see like what kind of content you're creating there. I also follow your channel, so I see like the new videos passing by every now and then as well. And the one that stood out to me that I think it's probably your best performing video right now is how to speak like Obama.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that video? Like, how did you come up with that idea, and like, what is it about?
It's one of the most important things also in workshop coaching. I think is one of the, besides of course that you have to have a story and know what you're doing and your content needs to be good, but one of the most important things when it comes to speaking and communicating is how to bring your message. 90% of everything that we're doing right now on the podcast, if you're watching the video or you're just hearing this, of course, if you're just hearing this, you're losing the whole, what we're doing with our body. But not a lot of people are going to remember everything that we're saying. Maybe some quotes or maybe some points, but most of them will be like, did I enjoy this? And I'm going to listen to a new podcast by Jasper, or I'm going to look Marnik up on LinkedIn, will be based on how we're bringing this. And everybody can bring it in their own way, but the whole video, Speak Like Obama, I call it Speak Like Obama because in workshops, I always get the question, oh yeah, like Obama, he's really good at this. Definitely when he was in office, it's with his pauses, and he can really make a point, and you can listen to him for ages, even though Obama has a very different style than a lot of other great speakers out there. So I thought like I'm going to call it that because it resonates the most with people. But basically, if you look at Brené Brown, Mel Robbins, Simon Sinek, Barack Obama, Winston Churchill, if you look at speakers from Belgium, Steven van Belgium, Peter Hinson, Dalo Peter, you name it, they're in our business, there are a lot of people in other businesses. They all master the way they bring their message. And in that video, I sum up what that basically is, because it's not something I invented. It's not something that it's top secret. It's something everybody does in their daily lives, but not aware. They're not aware of it. And once you become aware and you can start using it as a technique, as a tool, then you see what these speakers, like for example, Obama, know exactly.
Is that like, this reminds me of like the workshop you gave once where you were like, well, talk me through like your morning yesterday.
There you go.
You're like,
that's the one.
I woke up at 8. I had a coffee. I went to the gym. I got back home. I like read the newspaper. And then you have like the differentiator there is when you will actually like, how would you say it exactly? Like you would tell it in like a more animate way, I guess, but I don't know the exact words that you used back then, or like how you bring it usually.
You got to pay attention, Jasper. You got to do another workshop here.
Yeah, I guess so.
No, basically the principle is simple. You don't even have to watch the video if you're listening to this. The principle is simple, and if you ever do a coaching training, doesn't have to be with me, with anyone else, they will always teach this because it's so important also to get people to talk about whatever you want them to talk about. The idea is simple. If you have a faster paced voice, a higher pitched voice, your voice, not necessarily mine, everybody's different. Faster, higher pitched voice, bigger movements. But bigger movements, not only your hands and your body, but your facial expressions, everything. That can be a negative story or positive story. It doesn't always have to be happy, happy, joy, joy. But if we experience faster, higher, bigger movements, more details that we're more into our story, like I woke up this morning and it was Monday, it was rainy outside, I wasn't really feeling this week, but then it was new bag day and I'm a big coffee fan. And I opened the bag and when I smelled that new bag coffee aroma, I was like, whoa, the week is there. It really does it for me. That, for example, is in my way, fast, higher pitch, more details.
Yeah.
What that will do, universal, doesn't matter what country you're from, what culture you're from, who you are, you will experience this as engaging and inspiring. But you cannot stay there, because if I only do that, you will be like, Marnik, calm down, man. Be quiet. It's too much. So you also need in your stories the other one, and that's the lower, slower voice. More factual observing. Smaller movements can be negative or positive. And what that does is universally people experience that as I'm being convinced this is important. Now, if you make the combination of those two, you get cool things, because I can be talking about, let's say, the bag with the coffee and I'm super pumped up and like I smell the coffee and I'm like, yes, this is gonna be my week. But then all of a sudden, Natalie walks down and she just got up and she's like, I just got an email and we have a little problem here. And she started talking about the email and all of a sudden I realized like, all right, it's gonna be a challenging week if you look at what we just got from that client, but we can fix it. I'm just making this up. We didn't get an email, no worries. But see how the atmosphere for you changes as I change my voice and my movement. Everybody does this because if you're talking to a friend and you're talking about your recent trip to US because you spent a lot of time in the US, you make the combination of those two. Sometimes you're going to go high, fast, big, and sometimes you're going to go low, slow, but you're not aware of it. Once you're aware of it, you can start using it as, for example, Barack Obama, to trigger the right emotion at the right time. And the last thing I'm going to say about that, not to do a whole monologue here, I'm just passionate about that, is the reason that is also so important and as universal is you do the same with your animals. If you have pets at home, I have 2 cats, like I said, they don't understand a word of what I'm saying. But if I come home and I have a high-pitched, faster voice, bigger movements, and I go like, where is it? Where's the little cat? Where's my cutie? The cat knows he's happy. I'm engaged.
Yeah.
Probably some great food is coming my way. But if I do a low, slow voice, more observing, and I'd be like, what are you doing? Stop doing that. They're like, okay, something's going on here. I need to focus. This is important. Even in the animal kingdom, the same rules. And if you do that, beautiful things happen on stage.
And in short, it's like the emotion that you insert into the story is very important, which also reminds me about something else that was in your book about you get the energy that you bring to the table. So let's say you have a meeting, like you and I have a meeting, and I come into the meeting, I'm like, Marnik, how was your weekend? Like immediately you will be like, okay, he's not very exciting about this meeting. Whereas if I come in like, hey, Marnik, how was your weekend? Like, I had an amazing weekend. I went for like a fall walk, like the leaves, it was so beautiful, the fall foliage. I hope you had a great weekend as well. Like immediately you will reflect to that energy as well. I think that's probably the most important parts that I actually like remembered from the book or like actually reference or like still reference quite often.
It's so simple, but so underused. Look at most Zoom and Teams calls in the corporate world. There's a lot of time spent on slides, on getting through the agenda, pinpointing the agenda, and then people are not aware on how they bring it. So most people say, oh my God, another Teams call, so boring. No, because it doesn't have to be boring because if there's focus on how you bring it. And yeah, that's why I'm so passionate about it. And also that energy, definitely online, like the energy, you lose twice the energy on screen. It's also when you're making videos, bring that energy. And then one important point is, I can imagine people listening right now or watching and saying, yeah, but Marnik, I don't want to be you. I don't want to be so American. I don't want to be fake or someone who learned in a workshop that I need to have bigger movements. And it's not about that. I always say, if you, like again with the US, if you go on holiday and someone asks you, how was your holiday? What will I get? Will I get Jasper saying, I went to the US, it was really nice, I enjoyed it, the sun was out, and I talked to a lot of people, also visited some companies. That will not be you talking about the US. It will be a play like in a movie between fast, slow, bigger movements. But the moment you go into business, you cut that out. You think you need to be corporate. You think that toned down, serious is the best way to move forward in corporate. No, we need your best version also on the screen, on the stage. And that's what it's about. And you're not going to be Obama.
Best version.
There you go. You're not going to be Obama. I'm not going to be Obama. You're not going to be Simon Sinek. I'm not going to be Simon Sinek. But there is a version of Jasper and there is a version of Marnik that people will love to listen to.
Absolutely. Like, how do you actually come up with topics to create content about, like that blog post, like the video, like everything else that you create? Like you create a decent amount of content, I would say.
Yeah, I'm not and that's, how do you say it? I'm conscious about it, and it's also a choice that I do not create content all the time. I create content when I feel like it and when I think I have something to say. but there's no. Also, I noticed also in my sales, this is a bit off topic, but also in my sales and network, it doesn't bring me more if I create more content in what I'm doing. I noticed that over the years, so I don't have that content pressure like I need to create another thing. That's one. And the topics is really simple. I do a lot of coachings, workshops. You get questions in those workshops, and after a while, if you give in a week 3-4 workshops, you look at all the questions you got or all the remarks you got or the discussions these people have, and you're like, what is the common denominator? And there's always 3-4 topics that returns in every company. And then that's a hot topic with people because all these different people are asking the same questions. And then I make a blog post or a video about it. So I use what people ask me as the trigger for the content. And then it resonates.
That's a very good one. It's like in bigger companies, I also usually tell them like your frontline workers are the ones who will bring you content. You just need to ask them about it.
Yeah.
Like if you go to customer service, like they know what's on the minds of your customers. They know what they want to learn about. But you just need to create that connection, and like the same for sales. Like salespeople are very good at figuring out what is important to people. But you need to create that connection between marketing and sales and customer service to one, get input from sales and customer service to create content, but then you also need to send it the other direction and feed them the content that you created based on their inputs. And that way you get like a pretty good synergy, I feel, between like marketing and like other frontline workers.
And it's that simple. A lot of things in life are simple, because I know I've said this a lot of times on this podcast. That's what you say. Also, let's take an extreme example. Let's say I'm running a construction company, which often is said, we're in construction and we shouldn't be like online and making content. It's not as easy as these marketing people or these big brands like Pepsi, and they have all these fancy, sexy things. They're also the same what you're saying. I just remodeled the house. If you just as a construction company, just list all the things that I was worried about, all the things that I was asking you, and also the architect of what is going to happen and how does this work and how can we do this, and you just make content about that, your website will explode because people are like, that's exactly what I was wondering about. I'll give you an example. I know that you know what I mean, but we recently went to Finland, to Lapland. Beautiful huskies, the whole thing,
I heard a lot about Lapland. It's pretty high up my list.
You should go. It was the best trip we ever did. From everywhere on the world, is the best trip we ever did. And there also, I wrote a blog post about it, and I took all the things people asked me up front and people asked me later on that were wondering if we should also go, but it's stopping us from going. For example, one of the things is, will I freeze there? It will be too cold. If there's one thing you won't have in Lapland, it's cold. It's -20, -30, but you will never have cold. And I wrote all those things in the blog post, and there you saw people like, this is exactly all my questions I had that was stopping us from going to that country. And if you do that, you hit the mark, and it's what you say, talk to customer service, and create that content.
It's also interesting that you actually write these articles about like personal experiences as well, because it's like one of the things I also really believe in is that whenever you're writing stuff, it shouldn't be just about whatever you're selling, but also about other things in life that are of interest to you. Because this is like how people will discover you, and maybe someone is looking for a trip to Lapland one day and then also sees like, oh, Marnik also does business coaching, or Marnik does like, how do you say, like not public speaking, but like at an event when you're like managing everything.
Oh yeah, hosting, emceeing.
That was what I was looking for. So Marnik also hosts an event. Like, I have an event coming up. Like, this seems like an interesting guy to like host that event for me. So that's something where I feel like people usually try to like stay in that box of like, this is the service that I provide. So this is what my content needs to be about. But I feel that does not always have to be the case.
No, it's finding a balance. Like, of course, you need to have most of the content about what you want to be recognized for and booked for. But I totally agree that you can have the link, because it also makes you human. Yeah. Not just that person makes you human. And I also think like content is about, and this might sound very philosophical, but content is about, for me, how can I help another person? So I write an article about my trip to Lapland. Do I want to be a vacation influencer? No. But I write it, I send it to people, I post it, and people are like, oh my God, this is so helpful. And it's the same with the business content. If you look at my YouTube videos, I have maybe 400 subscribers. Some videos have 60, 200, some have a couple of thousand, but not that many views. I'm not a big influencer, but that doesn't matter to me because I know some people DM you and said, this video meant so much to me, helped me so much in my company. And if you go from the perspective, did I help other people? Then it will work. Then it will trickle down and eventually you will get business out of it.
Maybe like one last question to round up the podcast. I also read in like one of your articles why saying no is important in business. Can you tell a little bit more about that? Because it's something that I've also been thinking about for quite a while, and like especially finding that balance.
Yeah, you've been checking me out. You've been reading everything. You've been a private detective.
I did my homework.
Yeah, there you go. Saying no, it's one of the things I needed to learn, and I think it's also, again, with the whole managing your time and really be very strict on your holidays. I think that's also one of the things that the most self-employed or entrepreneurs struggle with, including me, is the saying no, because definitely in the beginning, you want to say yes to everything because you think you need the business, you need to make money, you need to pay your bills, you want to grow, you're scared that your business is going bankrupt, so you're like, yes, let's go. But I also noticed, and I always say that to people that are just starting out, is you will have to say no a lot, certainly in the beginning, because the moment people know that you run your own company, a lot of people will come to you if they know you. But from all the 10 requests, let's say 2 are actually valuable and all the rest is just wasting your time or taking advantage of you. That sounds really negative, but it is. Yeah. So you got to say no more often than not. I think it was Mark Cuban, the billionaire, that said you need to have like 5 no's to get to a yes, also for yourself. 5 no's to then get that yes project that you actually need, that you now have time for, because you said 5 times no. How do you do that? Well, you got to start really pinpointing for yourself what gives you energy or not. Now we're back with the energy. And now when projects come our way, and yes, we have now the luxury to choose, but also in the beginning, be strict. Your time is very precious. We see, will this give us energy or not? Is this client on the same page? Do we have the same value, the same views? And sometimes it could be that it is the most sexy brand in the world that everybody wants to work for. And they come to you like, we want to work with you. And you talk to them in a call and you notice,
that's not a fit.
Now, I want to say yes because the money is really good. But I shouldn't say yes because this is not gonna. Yeah. And in the beginning, I would have said yes. Now I do no. And because I said no, a new opportunity comes. And I say to Natalie, thank God we said no to this one, or we couldn't be doing this one.
Yeah, that's the cost of opportunity.
Yeah,
and I think it's like, it's not only important in business, but I feel like in personal life as well. Like one example that comes to mind is yesterday I went to visit my grandmother, and my godfather was also there, and he's like, oh, Jasper, like maybe you can come over for a drink before you go to the US soon. And I was like, gotta be honest here, like I really can't make that happen. Like that's also why I came to your place like last week. But like coming by again this week, sorry, but and like that is something that used to be pretty hard to me, because I would be like, oh, I might hurt like their feelings if I say that I won't like accept their request. And like you just like lose control of what you're doing, and by trying to please everyone, like at the end of the day, like you're just making yourself miserable. Like that's more or less like my experience there.
Yeah, you're running around, you're not getting happy, exhausted. It's also the beginning of burnout. Also, if you do it at the job, saying yes to everything, things that go against you, and before you know it, your whole body is playing up and be like, what the hell are we doing? How did we get in that situation? It's so true. Definitely also with the people around you in your private life. Does it give you energy? Is this an added value? No. And also, we all know this, but I saw this recently in an interview. I don't know the lady that said it. I can't remember the name, but she said also when you do that, say no or no thank you, full stop. She also said, why people have to train themselves first to say no. And once you get to that stage, you have the no and the explanation of why you're saying no. She says, no, you're not in the mood. You don't want to go. You don't want to do this. No, thank you, full stop. My agenda, I don't need to explain anything to you. And that was also something that resonated with me. Like, yeah, why am I always explaining why I'm saying no?
And you think that should also be the case in like when it's like more personal, like in personal relationships? Because there I feel I would have like a harder time like not giving an explanation, because then I would really think like I'm hurting someone's feelings.
Yeah, of course, the no, thank you, or no, full stop is, if you do that all the time and you just do it like that, black and white, you're not going to be the most loved person.
Yeah.
But when, for example, friends say, do you want to meet up on Saturday evening? And you have nothing in your agenda, but you know from having a very busy week that it's actually better for your body to just stay home, relax. Saturday, watch a movie, relax. Then I would say no. And maybe if you want to feel friendly, you say, no, I'm just going to chill at home. Yeah, the week was busy, I'm going to chill at home. That should be enough. It shouldn't be like, because maybe next time we'll... No, busy week, we'll meet up next time, let's go. Doesn't have to be an whole explanation.
I like that.
And if they're your friends, they will understand. If they're not your friends and they will make you feel bad and guilty, you should question if they're your friends, actually.
That's also a very good point.
Sounds harsh, the way I'm expressing it right now, but...
We'll end the podcast on this harsh tone.
Yeah, there you go.
No, actually, Marnik is a very friendly person. I know him for quite a while now, so he's not that harsh, I feel. Okay.
But it's, you got to choose. It's the last thing I'm going to say. You got to choose, like, who's the energy, also in business, who's the energy vampire and who actually understands you and gives you energy.
Yeah.
Why spend time with energy vampires if you were time limited on this planet? It's so small. Use it for people that lift you up, understand you, and
like time is they always say like time is the most limited resource, and yet people are like spending it left and right as if it's like they have like plenty of it.
I think the recent video of that one thing that I saw from Eddie Murphy, and he said the average person, I think in the US becomes 75 years old, something like that. He said, yeah, just hit it down. You have 75 winters, 75 summers. That's all you have. Think about it like that. 75 winters. Start ticking them. And then you're like, oh my God, I need to make the most of this. And that's also, to bring it back, to bring the full circle to public speaking and the communication we started it. There also, if you bring a story, people listening to this podcast and seeing me, I can imagine, let's say 20% of the people listening to this, if they're still listening, would be like, Marnik, you're not my kind of guy. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to focus, not that there's something wrong with you. I'm going to focus on the 80% and the 20%. You can't get along with everybody. And not everybody should be a fan. And not everybody loves the same movies. My friend is totally into horror movies. I can't watch it, but it's fine. But I'm also not going to convince that person to watch another movie, and he's not going to convince me to watch horror movies. It's fine. That's
exactly. You can't please everyone.
No.
And we'll wrap it up at that.
There you go.
Thank you for joining me today, Marnik. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. You're most welcome. Hope it added some value in the, I don't know how much, in the 40 minutes that we've been talking.
Absolutely.
All right.
Talk to you soon.